All right. Good morning, church. We are so happy that we are able to gather together in this way. We just want to capture as much of these opportunities as we can. And please join in with us as we worship this morning. I can see the promised land. Though there's pain within the plan, there is victory in the end. Your love is my battle cry. When my fears like Jericho, the walls around my soul. When my heart is overthrown, your love is my battle cry, the anthem for all my life. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past is broken in two. Over fear, over lies, we're singing the truth that nothing is impossible with you. Oh, 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 oh. There is hope within the fight, in the wars that wage inside. Though the shadows steal the light, your love is my battle cry, the anthem for all my life. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past is broken in two. Over fear, over lies, we're singing the truth, and nothing is impossible. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into. Over fear, over lies, we're singing the truth, that nothing is impossible with you. Oh, 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 oh. No greater name, no higher name, no stronger name than Jesus. You overcame, broke every chain, forever reign. King Jesus, no greater name, no higher name, no stronger name than Jesus. You overcame, broke every chain, forever reign. King Jesus. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into. Over fear, over lies, we're singing the truth, that nothing is impossible. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into. Over fear, over lies, we're singing the truth, that nothing is impossible with you. Oh, oh, nothing is impossible. Thank you, It wasn't for nothing that you shed your blood, so I'm gonna live like my shame is gone. I won't be shackled to the way I was. I'm gonna live like my chains are gone, gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I shout like the battle's won. Fall back, devil, 'cause your time is up. I'm gonna live like the stone is gone, gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I sing hallelujah. Done, done. He is risen, it is done, and I sing hallelujah. How great the power of the blood. Oh, oh, oh. I am the righteousness of God. Oh, oh, oh. How great the power of the blood. Oh, oh, I am the righteousness of God. Oh, 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 oh. Gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I sing hallelujah. Done, done. He is risen, it is done, and I sing hallelujah. Gone, gone. Now my sin is dead and gone, and I sing hallelujah. Done, done. He is risen, it is done, and I sing hallelujah. I know things look different and are different right now, but I'm still so thankful that we're able to capture this opportunity to still worship together and still hear the message and the word of God preached together. And I take hope and solace in the fact that our God still sits on the throne, that there's nothing about this that surprises him, that our future is secure, that our hope is secure in the person and the act of Jesus Christ. That the future is not just something that he knows about, but a place that he already is. And through all the trials and all the waves, we just purpose to fix our eyes on Jesus Christ this morning, to take our eyes off of our struggles and place them onto him. God, for we know that you are sufficient. You are enough. God, and if you did nothing else for us from this day to the day that we are called home, that you are still worthy of our praise. And as we continue in worship this morning, I encourage you, sing these words out. There is power and strength in the truth of these songs. They're based in Scripture, and the message is secure. I worship you this morning, God. Who am I that the highest King would welcome? I was lost, but he brought me his love. Oh, his love. Oh. The sun sets free. Oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. His grace was while I was a slave to sin. Jesus died for me. Yes, He died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. Thank you, Lord. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. The Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. The Son sets free, oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Sing your praises at the end of the song. Chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. Sing this out this morning. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Believe this morning. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I am. The Son sets free, the Lord is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. We thank you, Lord. Praise your name. Worship you, God. We lift your name on high this morning. Praise you. are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you, Lord. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Sing that again. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. And so today we put our hope and our faith in all that you are and all that you said, knowing and believing that you are everything we need, no matter what we're facing or what we're going through. And so, God, we pray that even though things look different, and even though things are challenging, we trust in you. We trust in you for hope. We trust in you for peace. We trust in you to overcome our worries and our anxieties and our stresses. We come to you and trust you to overcome our loneliness, our isolation, our feelings that we're alone. We come to you today trusting in you for everything we need, knowing that you are more than enough for us. So we take this time to just pause and reflect on who you are and what you've done. And we thank you that you will continue to move in our lives and continue to make a way in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I want to welcome you this morning to Riverview Community Church. I hope you are doing well. I'm trusting that you're doing well. Here's what I would love for you to do right now is pull out your phone and shoot someone a text and say hello, see how they're doing, check in on them. You might have to call them maybe later, but send somebody a text and just say hello. There's nothing that we need more than somebody saying good morning and hello to us. And so make sure you take a moment and do that today, because it is so important that we take the time to say hello to others and check in on them. So make sure you do that. Also, another thing that you can do is we would love for you to fill out our digital connection card. So you probably saw that on riverview.cc/Sundays right there at the bottom before you clicked on the link to go into YouTube. We'd love for you to let us know that you're watching. We'd love for you to let us know that if there's anything we can do for you. So please take a moment and do that as well. And there's a couple of super cool announcements that we got coming up for you. The first one is every Thursday, we have Community Thursday. That's 7 o'clock. All you got to do is log on to our Zoom. There's a link available at riverview.cc, so you can see it right there on the homepage. Community Thursday is at 7. It's a great opportunity for you to connect with other people, pray, have a short devotional, and so we'd love for you to join in on Community Thursday. Another opportunity that we have is we are picking up a new session of community groups. And so there are a few different options for you to join in. Those are going to be available starting the week of May 10th. And so if you'd like to be a part of that, there's a few different options for you to check in and be a part of. They're all online. And so we would love for you to participate. They're going to be different days of the week, different topics. One is going to be covering the book Love Does. So if you want to go on Amazon, if you don't have it already, jump in and get that book, and we can talk about that. Another one is going to be looking at heaven in a book study by Randy Alcorn. So make sure, again, you can grab that one. And then there's going to be some other options that are just based on what we're talking about here on Sunday mornings. And so that all is going to be happening the week of May 10th. You can sign up for it online starting tomorrow. And so we would love for you to join in on our community groups that are happening. Well, I trust that, like I said, I trust you're doing well. And I trust that even though things are different and things are challenging, I'm trusting God, believing Him that you are doing well, that you are getting taken care of. And so hopefully that is the case. Really cool moment we had. We reached out to several families that we help out during the year from Neely O'Brien Elementary this week. And we had the opportunity to go, and from your generosity, we were able to buy several months of groceries for several different families, also reaching out to some others. And so I want to say thank you, one, for your generosity each week. You can give online at riverview.cc or through the app,
And I'm so grateful that we had the opportunity to help some families in need this week. We're going to be continuing reaching out. And so thank you for your generosity as we had the opportunity just to bless so many families this week. We started a new series last week called Margin. And what we're looking at is how do we have enough room in our lives for what matters most? And when we started this series, when I began kind of planning and putting together and praying and wrestling with it, we were in the middle of the fast pace. We had just gotten out of the Christmas season. It was, early January. And the thing that I was feeling, even in my own life sometimes, is that there is busyness, and in the culture that we live in, it's about busyness, it's about performance, it's about production, it's about doing and going. And what I found out, even in my own life at times, and whether it be with work or with other commitments or things that I'm doing in my life, what I noticed in my own life was that there was a lot of times where I felt like, man, I'm putting a piece here and a piece here and a piece here. And when it gets to the things that I want to do, the things that matter most to me, there was a lot of times where I felt, man, I don't have the energy for it. I don't have the energy in my emotions. I don't have the mental energy, the physical energy. I don't have the time. And so I started wrestling with what does it look like to create margin in our lives to what matters most? Well, then the quarantine hit and life changed drastically for all of us. And I'm sure that even though I know, because I have 3 kids at home, and so I know a lot of you do as well, I understand how working at home and having your kids, that there's that tension of still trying to do your job and still taking care of things. And also you have your kids there. And so that creates different levels of either stress or frustration. But the thing is that I've found in my own life is that I have been able to make time for what matters most, specifically like things with my kids. So spontaneous bike rides or wrestling matches or backyard baseball, whatever it may be, time has been created to do those things. But the thing that I'm worried about, and I'm sure that most of you might be worried about as well, is when you dive back into whatever normal will look like eventually, that as we get out of the stay-at-home order, as we get back into a little bit more of a routine, I'm sure that the scary thing for a lot of us is, yeah, we enjoy the time that we have, and we enjoy a little bit of the schedule and a little bit more of the free time and not having as many commitments. But what happens is I'm nervous and a little worried that when we get back into a routine of normalcy, that we'll dive back into the busyness, to the commitments, to going and the busyness and production and performance that leaves us leaving our lives in pieces. And so last week we looked at how we need to begin to number our days, as it says in Psalm 90. We begin to look at how we begin to have wisdom to make decisions in our lives for what matters most. And I love what Jesus says in Matthew 11, because he invites us into a completely different life than what we're used to. Because the life that we're used to is one that is busy, that is how much can I do, how much can I perform, it's go, do everything you can. But Jesus has a different life. And he says this in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I'll give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I'm humble and gentle at heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." And so notice the difference in the life that Jesus invites us to compared to the life that our culture invites us to. Jesus invites us to rest, and the type of rest that he invites us to is not one that we rest because we have burned ourselves out, because emotionally or physically or mentally or relationally or spiritually we've reached our end. He doesn't invite us to rest and then jump right back into the busyness and performance and production of our life. The life that Jesus invites us into is one that is restful, and one where he teaches us a new rhythm of life, that he teaches us how to have margin. It says that, that he teaches us that he is gentle and humble at heart, that the yoke that he gives us, the burden that we carry is lighter compared to the demands that our culture puts on us. And so Jesus invites us into this life that isn't based or predicated on our performance or our production or our busyness, but he invites us into a life that is restful, that is peaceful, that has room for the things that matter most in our lives. And so last week we defined margin as this: it's the amount available beyond what's necessary. The amount available beyond what is necessary. Now, here is the challenge that we have, is when we begin to feel like we have some extra margin in our lives, we like it for a little bit, right? When you feel like something, maybe a project that you were working on at work is cleared, and so there's that downtime after where you're not as busy, and you like that, right? Or maybe it's a moment where a kid's sport ends and you're done with every Saturday for a little bit, and you have that downtime. And we enjoy those moments. We enjoy when things slow down. We enjoy what that feels like. But the longer there's downtime and the longer there isn't something happening, we start feeling like these feelings of, I'm not busy enough. And we don't think about it like that, but we feel like, man, I'm not doing something. Something's off. I'm not producing. I'm not performing. I'm not busy. And we start to feel a little bit guilty that there's room in our schedule. We start to feel a little bit guilty that we have time, that we have enough margin to do the things that we want to do. We have enough margin to give ourselves to what matters most, that we're only giving what's required or what's necessary in other areas that maybe don't matter as much. And so we start feeling guilty and we start performing again. We start finding things to make us busy. We start finding things to make us produce more or perform more because we have those feelings that I've got to keep going. I've got to keep doing something. And so what begins to keep margin from our lives? And that's what I want to begin to look at today. What are the things that, begin to take away our margin, begin to remove the margin from our lives? And I really believe this. I believe that the biggest enemy to margin in our lives is a combination of fear and comparison. That when those two things are joined together in our lives, it eliminates our margin faster than anything else. Now, when you begin to feel the feelings of fear and comparison, and you combine those two things, what it produces in our lives is discontentment. That as you begin to look at the fears that you have, and you begin to compare your life to others, you begin to see, man, I'm not as content, or I'm not as happy, or I'm not as at peace, or I'm not as satisfied with my life as others. And so when we have fear and we have comparison and it produces discontentment, it produces a feeling in us that I have to go back to the grind, that I've got to get busy again, that I have to produce, that I have to perform. And we start to begin to fill our schedule with more things. We start to begin to fill our life with more things and more stuff. And the margin in our life decreases because we are so focused on producing. We're so focused on these feelings that were of fear and comparison in our lives, that we wrestle with the discontentment, and we try to find a way to eliminate discontentment through busyness and performance and production. Now, you might not look at yourself as someone who is fearful. And I think when we look at the word fearful, we tend to think of like fight or flight, that I'm afraid of something, so I either have to fight it or I have to run away from it. But sometimes fear takes on a lot of different forms. Like, fear is very much a chameleon. That fear can take on the anxieties, it can take on stress, it can take on worry. And so I want to begin to maybe help us identify a little bit of the things that we are fearful of, that produce comparison in our lives, that automatically lead us to discontentment, which lead us to reducing our margin. And so let's begin. And like I said, you might not feel like a fearful person. And so maybe like you need to keep like a tally, like a scorecard at home as we go through some of these fears, that maybe you need to begin to like evaluate, like, where am I afraid at in my life? And so I think the first fear, and I think we all kind of relate to this, is this fear of my life not counting. I think in some way, we all have this fear of our life isn't making a difference, that we're not making a big enough impact, that our life doesn't count, that we're not doing something significant enough. And so what happens is when we have that fear that our life isn't making a difference, that it's not counting, that it's not on purpose, when we have those feelings, we begin to look around to find satisfaction, something that brings a little bit of peace in the middle of our fear. And what we begin to do is we begin to compare our lives to others. And so you might feel like your life doesn't count, and you might look at someone else that maybe is in your life. It might be a friend, it might be a family member, it might be a coworker, it might be someone that you follow on social media, and you begin to look at their life and you go, man, their life seems like they're always on it, like they're making a difference, they're doing something significant with their life, and you begin to compare your life to theirs. And what happens? You go, man, I'm not doing anything. Like my life doesn't really have meaning. I've wasted time. I've wasted my life. I'm not doing anything significant. And when we feel and we're afraid that our life doesn't count, and we compare it to someone else, it produces discontentment. And when we're discontent, we go back to busy. And so in order to make our life count, in order to make us feel like we're doing something significant, that our life matters, what do? We go back to busyness. We find things that we think are going to bring meaning and purpose and significance into other people's lives and to make us feel like our life matters and that it counts. And so we go and go and go and go, and we get to a place where we think it's making a difference, and then we compare again. And we are fearful, well, maybe what I just did isn't significant enough. Maybe what I just did, it wasn't a big enough contribution. And we begin to feel, again, that fear, that worry, that anxiety that my life doesn't count. And so we compare it to somebody else. And again, right back to busyness. And so maybe for you, you're afraid that your life doesn't count. And so what that has done in your life is it's created less margin. Now, maybe for others of us, or in addition to us, there's the fear of falling behind. Right? That you have this fear that you are going to fall behind other people. And so you look at maybe you're single, maybe you're not married, and you might have married friends or people that you look at and that are getting engaged, getting married, all these different things. And so you begin to look at your life and you go, man, like that's never going to happen to me. And you begin to compare these other people's relationships because you're afraid that maybe that will never happen for you. And so you compare them and you begin to do things in your life that create busyness, that create stress, that create this chaos so that you can try to catch up because you're nervous of falling behind. Or maybe for you, you see times that people spend with their kids. And maybe, you're at home and you're working hard and you're trying to make ends meet, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you might see someone that's in a different situation than you, and you are afraid that you're not doing something significant, that relationally you're falling behind with your kids. And so what do? You see someone else that you think, man, they seem to always have it together. Like they're always with their kids, they're investing in their kids, they're caring for their kids, and you're thinking, I don't have the time to do that, I don't have the energy, I'm trying to make ends meet. And so you start to compare your life to theirs, and you fear that you're not doing enough relationally, that you're falling behind relationally with your kids. And so you begin to do more things that are keeping you busy and perform and producing. And ultimately, it takes away your margin. Because you're afraid of falling behind, you start to compare to others. And, I think as parents, it is really easy for us to feel like our kids might be falling behind. And so you might look at your kid's situation in school right now. And, when the whole quarantine started and schools were first canceled and you're like, okay, I just got to get them to, the middle of April. And then, they'll go back to school and they'll be fine. But then as the order went further and school was canceled, you started to panic. You're sitting there going, my kids they're going to fall behind, and we start to play like the what if game a little bit. They're like, what if my kid falls behind academically? They're never going to be able to catch up. And because they can't catch up, they're always going to be behind. And so because they're always behind, they're never going to go into college. And because they never get into college, they're never going to get a job. And because they never get a job, they're never going to move out of my house. And forever, I'm going to be stuck in this situation. Right? You have all of these fears and worries of falling behind. And so you've done above and beyond what's required, that you have done so much, and it is stressing you out, it is stressing your kids out because you're afraid they're going to fall behind academically during this season. And even before the quarantine happened, we were always worried that our kids were falling behind. That maybe you might see someone else, and you see their kids, and you start to look at them and go, man, they're playing a sport, they're in this club, they're doing well in school, everyone seems to like them, they're involved, they're doing all these things, and you see the busyness of their life, and you see what looks to you as happiness or joy as their kid excelling, and you look at your kid and you're like, great, you haven't taken a shower in 3 days, and you can barely, like, you're not even coordinated enough to play a sport, and you begin to like go, okay, they've got to do something. Like, I've got to make sure that my kid doesn't fall behind. And so you begin to schedule your kid's life more and more and more and more. And then your kid, trust me, because I've seen it as a high school coach, there are so many times in sports specifically, baseball, football, where I have kids that'll come into high school and they look and they're like, Coach, I don't even want to be a part of this anymore. Like, I'm only doing this because my parents are making me. And they're like, I've been playing so long and I've been doing so many other things, and they've overscheduled. And the reason that our kids feel that way is because there's a fear that they're falling behind, that maybe emotionally or socially or physically or academically, they're falling behind. And so we put more and more and more in their lives. And so maybe that's for you. You have felt like you are falling behind, or your kids are falling behind, and it has created worry. It has created discontentment. And in that discontentment, you found ways to reduce your margin because you wanted to make sure that you or your kids didn't fall behind. I think another way that we fear is FOMO, or fear of missing out, right? That you are afraid that you are missing out on something. And so you might see something on social media, you might see something at work, you might see something in the neighborhood, and you are afraid, why wasn't I invited? Why can't I do that? Well, and you have this fear and this anxiety that you're missing out on something. And so when you are afraid that you are missing out, it creates busyness. Your margin gets reduced because when you're afraid, it produces comparison. So you compare yourself to somebody else, and it reduces the margin in your life. And so you might be afraid that you are missing out on something. And so you never say no to anything, right? That you get to work and you're afraid that you might miss out on a promotion. You're afraid that you might miss out on an advancement. You might miss out on something. And so you do everything. And you go and you go and you go because you're afraid that this opportunity might never come in front of me again, that I might never have another shot at this promotion. And you might know that you already are maxed out, that you are running at maximum capacity, but you're afraid that you might miss out on something like a promotion. And so you go and you go and you go and you go, and the promotion comes and you're worried that it will never come again. So you say yes to it. And what happens? Your margin goes down even further. More pieces of you get separated out, and you run into the fact that you don't have enough to give your entire self to what matters most. And so you're afraid that you might miss out on something. You might miss out on a relationship. You might miss out on a promotion. You might miss out on a job. Your kids might miss out on something. And so we have this fear that we are missing out in life. And when we are afraid, we compare and we see, man, they seem to always have it together. They seem that every chance that there's something that they can say yes to, they say yes to it. And so this fear creates comparison, which produces discontentment, which reduces our margin. And maybe the last thing that you are afraid of is the fear of disappointing others. Now, you could also maybe rephrase it of you're afraid of not being liked. Now, I always kind of chuckle when people are like, yeah, I don't care if people like me or not. You do. Like, it's okay. Let's be honest, right? That every person, I don't care who you are, we all want to be liked. There's no one in the world that really comes along and says, yeah, I don't care if people don't like me, right? We all have that feeling of, I want people to like me. And so, because we are afraid of disappointing others, because we're afraid of not being liked, what happens? It produces relational discontentment. And so we do whatever we can to make sure that people like us, to make sure that we don't disappoint people. And so what happens? We have the fear of someone not liking me, of disappointing someone. That produces comparison because we look at someone else in our neighborhood, in our office, at our school, and we go, man, everyone seems to like them. What are they doing? And we begin to compare and we go, man, they seem to be doing everything. And so I'm going to do everything. I'm going to say yes to every opportunity. I'm going to be involved in everything I can. And as we do that, what happens is it produces that discontentment, which reduces our margin. And so you are there and you are afraid that if I don't say yes to everything at work, no one's going to like me. If I don't say yes to every PTA thing at my kid's school, my kids are not going to have the opportunity. I'm going to miss out. And we compare ourselves to others. And in that comparison, it reduces our margin because we begin to do things that we begin to do these things to try to help us make sure that people like us, that we don't disappoint others. So we say yes to everything, we get involved in everything, and then we wonder, How am I so busy? What's going on in my life? I don't have room for anything. Stephen Furtick, he's a pastor in North Carolina. And I think he said this best. He said, we are comparing people's highlights to our behind the scenes. You know, when you look at social media and you see those moments where it seems like that family's perfect, that person is perfect, they have it all together, what we end up doing in this fear and comparison that reduces our margin and creates discontentment, what happens is we are afraid and we compare and we see the comparison, and what we are seeing is every person's highlight reel. We're not seeing the behind the scenes. We're not seeing the dysfunction. We're not seeing the chaos. We're not seeing their ups and their downs. We just see the filtered version. And we are taking what there is filtered version, this version of what looks like everything is together and perfect. And we look at our mess. We look at our behind the scenes. We look at the dysfunction of our lives and we go, man, they seem to have it. Like their life is so much better. And we fear that we're falling behind, that we're missing out, that no one's going to like us, that we're not going to have the right opportunities. And the fear creates this moment of where I compare, and I compare produces discontentment. And as I am discontent, I find busyness and performance and production, and it reduces my margin. Fear plus these feelings of comparison equal discontentment, and it creates these really difficult moments in our lives. And so what we find out is that our margin is reduced by fear and comparison. The Apostle Paul, he was in prison, and it was right around 62 AD that he writes a letter to the church at Philippi. And he writes some interesting, throughout this letter, read Philippians, that's where the letter is. It's Philippians, the New Testament. And he writes some interesting things. And put yourself in the perspective of Paul's in jail as he's writing this letter. And so, like, life is not great. If you are incarcerated, I'm sure it's not like a perfect situation, right? That you could easily look at someone else and compare your life to them and say, man, at least I'm not here, right? Like, they are free. They get to do whatever they want. I'm stuck in jail. And so this is the place that Paul writes this letter. In Philippians 4, 11 through 13 says this, not that I was ever in need, for I've learned how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I've learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it's with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. And so here's the lesson from Paul's letter, is that when you are content, you will find margin. That when you are content with the things in your life, you are going to end up finding margin. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't aspire for more. It doesn't mean that you can't try to do more. It doesn't mean that you can't try to better your life. It doesn't mean that where you're at, you're going to be stuck there forever, and that's contentment. What it means is that you're in this position where you realize that whether you have a little or whether you have a lot, whether your stomach is full or empty, no matter where you're at, you are content, not in the situation you are in, but you are content in Jesus. You understand that through him, that as we sang that song, that it's you who I say I am, that I am whoever you say I am, Jesus, that it's not me, it's not what my culture says, it's not how I'm defined by others, but I'm content in who I am and what I have because of Jesus, because of what he's done. Because you and I, the gospel is this, is that you and I are sinners, and there's no way for us to pay the price that's required. That because of our sin, death is the only way to pay for it. We can't earn our forgiveness and salvation. We can't pay. We can't be good enough. And so what did Jesus do? He goes to the cross. He dies for our sins. He takes our place. And you and I, we're still sinners. But Jesus died for us, offering us forgiveness of our sins, new life, a chance at forgiveness and hope. And if we put our faith and our hope and our trust in him, believing that he died on the cross, rose again, and conquered evil, death, and sin, and gives us grace, we can have a relationship with God. And so this is really the crux of our discontentment, the fact that we are sinners. That's where our fear, that's where our comparison, that's where our discontentment comes from. And so when our life is found in Jesus, it produces contentment. And the strength of Jesus allows us to live our life incredibly different than if we don't have Jesus. That when you are a follower of Jesus and you have put your hope and your trust in him, your life is different because it is content not because of what you have or what you don't have. It's content because of Jesus' strength in your life. When I was growing up, there was this guy that went to our church, and he didn't have a lot. He didn't have a car. He lived in a very small, modest apartment. He didn't have a lot of name brand clothes or new clothes. If you were to compare life to him, a lot of things would seem to if you were angry about life, you could look at his life and go, I'm better than that, because you could compare. But here's the thing about this guy, is that he seemed so content with his life. And every time you would talk with him, he would just exude this happiness and this contentment. And yeah, there were times where he might start grumbling about something, that he might grumble about not having a car. He might grumble about not having the nicest things. But every time he started to grumble, he goes, I shouldn't complain. I know I'm better off than some other people. And you begin to see that even in the little that he had, he was content. And it wasn't because he had everything. It wasn't because he was the best. It wasn't because that his life was so great. It was because he looked at life from the contentment that as long as I have Jesus, I'm going to have enough. That as long as my life and my salvation is in him, I'm going to be taken care of. I'm going to have what I need. And so he lived that way of this idea of contentment and satisfaction, knowing that as long as Jesus' strength is with me, that I'm going to be fine. And sure, you could want more, because he did. Eventually, he saved up enough money to get a car. He moved to a different apartment. But if those things never happened, he was still content. He was still thankful. He was still happy. He was still glad because Jesus was his source of contentment. That he didn't fear missing out. He didn't fear not having enough. He didn't fear falling behind. He was content because when you are content in Jesus, it changes the way you live your life. See, this is the principle we need to understand about margin and gratitude. Gains in margin come through gratitude, while collapses in margin come through comparison. That when I am someone that is filled with gratitude for my life and for the things that I have, and I'm looking at life going, man, I'm thankful for what I have. I'm thankful for the job. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for wherever I'm at in life. When you have gratitude, you have gains in your margin. Because when I'm discontent, when I'm comparing my life to others, when I'm afraid that I'm not doing enough, when I'm afraid that I'm missing out, when I'm afraid that my life doesn't matter, when I'm afraid that someone's not going to like me, it's going to lead to comparison. And the more that I compare my life with other people, the more my margin is reduced, and more it collapses. When I trust and I have my content in Jesus, it changes my life because I am thankful. I have gratitude in my life that I might not have had before. And I know that Jesus is going to take care of me. I know that he is going to be there for me. And so gratitude, gains in our margin come through gratitude, while collapses in our margin come through comparison. And so here's how we protect our margin in our life. We protect the margin by being thankful. We protect the margin through gratitude. And so here's what I want you to do right now. We're going to have a little bit of interactive session. If you can, because you might be watching on an app via your TV. But if you're not, here's what I want you to do. I want you in the comments right now on the video, type in something that you're thankful for. Type in what the gratitude that you might have. Because as we begin to express our thankfulness for what we do have, what begins to happen is our gratitude goes up. And as we have more gratitude and more thankfulness, the gains in our margin go up. But the more we compare, it reduces. And so our gratitude protects our margin, that it keeps us from lowering and comparing and having those fears that things are missing out. And so take a moment right now and type in something you're thankful for. And then here's something that you might have to do this week. I want to encourage you, if this is an area where you struggle, where you might look at, man, I'm not content, I don't have gratitude, or you struggle with comparing or the fear of missing out or whatever it may be. Maybe this week you need to take time on your social media channels to maybe, first off, you might just have to shut them off. That maybe that's where you do your most comparing. And so maybe every day we all need to just take a moment and write down the things that we're thankful for. And some of us, we might need to shut off our social media and just take time to write what we're thankful for. Others of us, you might want to begin to say what you're thankful for every day on social media. That you might take a moment and just type in, you know what, today I'm thankful for my house. I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful that I'm content in Jesus. I'm thankful for my church. Whatever you might be thankful for, because as we are thankful, our gratitude protects our margin. But when we compare, our margin collapses. So you might have fear, which leads to comparison, which produces discontentment. And in our discontentment, it reduces our margin. And so we have to tell and have these moments where our life is filled with gratitude, where we are communicating what we are thankful for, where we show our gratitude to the things that are happening in our lives. I love what Proverbs says in Proverbs chapter 15, verse 15. It says, "For the despondent, every day brings trouble. For the happy heart, life is a continual feast." And so really there's two options here. There's the despondent. There's the one that as they look at everything in their life, they are fearful of what they're missing out on. They're fearful of not being liked. They're fearful that they're not going to ever have anything. They're fearful of their relationships. They're fearful of their time. They have no margin because everywhere they go, they look and they say, I don't have enough. That person's got it better than I do. That family's better than I am. That marriage is better than mine. That job, their finances. And we compare everything around us. And we look at the things in our life and we say, everything is bad. Everything isn't good enough. I'm not the best. I don't have everything I want. And we have the option to be despondent. And what does it say? That the despondent every day brings trouble. You might be wondering, how come every day of my life is just seems like I don't have enough, that everybody's got it better than I do? It's probably because you lack contentment. And when you lack contentment, you lack margin. Because when I have gratitude and I'm content, my margin is going to increase. It's going to be protected because I don't have the feelings that I have to perform, that I have to produce, that I have to do. So we have to realize that gratitude protects our margin. And you might be the despondent person. And so you might have to just stop what you're doing. And maybe like my friend that I grew up with, that he didn't have a lot, when he caught himself complaining about something, he would always stop himself. It was amazing how he did it. And he would begin to say, I'm so thankful for this. I'm so glad that I have this. I'm so grateful for this relationship. I'm so grateful that I have this moment. And all of a sudden, that our gratitude protects our margin. Because when you're despondent, every day it brings trouble. And when you have gratitude in your life, it stops the complaining. It stops the comparison. It stops the fear. Because I know that my life is found in Jesus and it's content in Him, not in who I am and not in what I can do and not what I have, but it is in Jesus. And so when I am the person that shares gratitude, that shares thankfulness, you're going to see your margin is protected because of the gratitude that you have. And so you can be despondent or you can have a happy heart, that life is a continual feast. Think about that. When you have gratitude and you're thankful and you're not comparing yourself to others and your contentment is found in Jesus, it's like a feast every day. It's like having more than enough because you know that Jesus is going to take care of you. You know that His strength is enough to change your life. And so you can walk through life going, you know what? I'm glad for what I have. I'm thankful for what I have. I'm thankful for my relationships. I'm thankful for my job. I'm thankful for my kids. I'm thankful for my friends. I'm thankful for the people in my life. I'm thankful for my house. I'm thankful for my car. Whatever it may be, you can find something every day to be thankful for. And when you do that, life seems like you've always got enough, like it's a feast. That like you can sit down. It's almost like Thanksgiving, where you have just all of the food laid out. And you sit there and you go, man, we're so blessed with everything we have. What if that's the way you looked at your life every day? You had that moment of gratitude and thankfulness. Because when you live with gratitude, it protects your margin and it creates a life that has found contentment in Jesus, that isn't about production or busyness or performance. It's simply about thanking God for what He's done in your life. In Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verse 9, it says this: enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Just dreaming about nice things is meaningless, like chasing the wind. I know there's times in our lives where we might look at our situation relationally, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, financially, and we dream of something better. We dream of a nicer house. We dream of a nicer car. We dream of a nicer marriage. We dream of nicer kids. We dream of, having better job, more money. And we have these dreams, and we have these hopes, and we have these aspirations. But it doesn't come from a thankful heart. It comes from a heart of fear and comparison. And that's why he says it's meaningless. That's why he says that it's meaningless just to dream about things, to dream about nice things. Because a lot of us, we don't dream out of our thankfulness. We dream out of our want. We dream out of our comparison. We dream out of our fear. And so Jesus wants to change our heart so that we find contentment, so that our hopes and our dreams aren't meaningless. That the things that we might dream for, they can become a reality because our contentment is Jesus. And so we know that even if I never get a nicer house, or even if I never get a nicer car, even if something in my life doesn't change, I know that I will be provided for, and I know that I will be fine because my contentment is found in Jesus. That it's him and him alone, and through his strength and me resting in him in the way that it says in Matthew 11, that when I take a rest in Jesus and my life is with him and I find contentment, I'm not fearful, I'm not comparing, my life is settled, I have gains in my margin is protected because I'm not afraid and I'm not comparing myself to others. And so I can dream of things differently because I know that no matter what, Jesus is there for me. I'll have contentment in my life. I won't have to fear or fret or worry. Craig Rochelle's a pastor in Oklahoma. He says this: envy is resenting God's goodness in other people's lives and ignoring God's goodness in your own life. And I think that's what happens the most. That when we are fearful and when we compare, we see God's goodness in someone else's life and we resent it. We say, they always are taken care of. They've always got a nice vacation. They've always got a better job. They've always got a better marriage. They've always got a nicer car. They've always got another house. It seems like everything they've got is better. And we resent what God is doing in their life. And we forget what God is doing in ours. We forget that God is working in our lives. That as I put my hope and my trust in Jesus, it produces contentment. That I don't have to compare, that I don't have to fear, that I don't have to perform, that I don't have to produce, that I don't have to be busy. That when my life is content in Jesus, it strengthens my life to a place where I can live with gratitude for what I have, where I can dream not for what I want out of fear and comparison, but I can dream for different things in my life because I know that no matter what, I will have Jesus and he is more than enough for me. And so we have to learn to be content. And maybe that's the challenge for us this week. Maybe you need to create margin in your life and protect the margin in your life by being thankful. And so here's kind of the final question that we have is, what are you thankful for? What are you hoping for? What are you hoping that Jesus does in your life? Not out of fear, not out of comparison, but what are you thankful for and hoping for that you can begin to express your gratitude, where you can begin to express your thankfulness? Because as you lean into gratitude and contentment in Jesus, it protects your margin. It keeps you from feeling like you have to do more. And so as we begin to look at what might happen here in the next weeks, months, however long this takes, it's going to be easy for us when we get out of quarantine and we start moving around again and life starts happening. It's going to be easy for us to say, man, those kids, man, when they were in quarantine, they learned French, they learned 5 different baking lessons, they can do math, they can read, and you're going to compare your kids to theirs. It's going to be easy when you get back to some sort of resemblance at work and you go, man, they got that job I was hoping for, or they got the promotion, and you begin to feel like there's this discontent because there's fear, because there's comparison. In Jesus, there's contentment. In Jesus, we find this moment where I might be fearful, but because of Jesus, I'm content. That I know that he has my back. I know he has my future. I know he's got my present. And so I'm thankful for what I have. I'm thankful and I express gratitude every day for the things that Jesus is doing in my life. Because when we have gratitude, it protects our margin. When I express gratitude, it produces gains. When I compare, it collapses my margin. And so what takes away our margin? Fear and comparison, because it leads to discontentment. And when I'm discontent, it makes me busy. It makes me want to produce. It makes me want to perform. But when I have contentment in Jesus, it changes my life to where I have gratitude, to where I have thankfulness. And the more gratitude I have, the more my gains and margin go up, and the more my margin is protected. And so that's the question we wrestle with this week. What am I thankful for? Where can I express gratitude? Because as you express thankfulness and gratitude, it's going to change your life. It's going to produce gains in your margin. And even as life starts picking back up and the pace picks back up, if you remain in a place of thankfulness and gratitude, you're not going to get caught up in the race of, I don't have enough room for anything in my life, that I've wasted my margin. I'm just giving pieces of myself. But no, gratitude and thankfulness allow you to have margin for what matters most. And not just a little bit, but enough margin you can give your whole self to it. So what can you be thankful for today? Will you take a moment and pray with me? God, I thank you that in you we find contentment. That in your Son, we can be thankful for what we have because he changes our lives from the inside out. And so this morning, I pray that we will be people that open our hearts to see where we're discontent, to see where we're afraid, to see where we're fearful or we're worried or we're anxious. And I pray that in that discontentment and in those fears that produce comparison and discontentment, I pray that we will combat that with being content in you and combat that with our thankfulness and our gratitude. Because you change our lives and you enable us no matter what, whether, as Paul said, whether it's with little or with much, we can be content. And so I pray that we will take time every day this week to be content for what we have. That we will take time to be content and thankful for whatever is in our lives. And I pray that as we find our contentment in Jesus, I pray that as we continue to be thankful and it feels like we run out of things that we're thankful for, I pray that you will begin to show things in our lives that we have overlooked on how we can be grateful and how we can be thankful. So Jesus, help us to be a thankful people, because when we're thankful and we express gratitude, it increases our margin and it protects our margin. So help us to be thankful. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I want to thank you for watching this morning. I hope that you will take time this week to express your thankfulness, whether it be on social media, writing it down every day. Take moments every day to share what you're thankful for. Tell it with someone. Share it with your kids, with your spouse, with your neighbors. Text someone and say, hey, I'm thankful for this. Because it's an opportunity for you to increase your margin and protect the margin that you have. I want to also encourage you this week that if you would like to give, you can do so. Riverview.cc. You can click on the giving link. You can give that way as well. If you aren't comfortable giving online, we still like to give. Contact Ron at riverview.cc, and we can get you some of our self-addressed giving envelopes that you can put your gift in and mail it back. And so we want to thank you for watching today. I want to thank you for your generosity, and I will be praying for you that this week, thankfulness and gratitude becomes an ever-present part of your life. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday.